In these two modern LEGO adventure games, one flies too close to the sun while the other barely takes off. But like two LEGO bricks, when you put them together, you might just get something beautiful. When I say LEGO video game, what do you think of? Do you think of the many apps released on the App Store and Google Play Store? Do you think of the LEGO additional modes that have been added to other established video games such as Fortnite? Or do you think back to the renaissance of LEGO games back in the early 2000s? Frankly, I'm the latter, but I don't think there's any wrong answer. And the reason we have a renaissance of LEGO games is because they don't really make them like they used to, for good and bad reasons. I don't mean to paint the picture that everything was glamorous back during the Renaissance. You could argue that the oversaturation of the LEGO game market was at an all-time high, but if you ask anyone my age or older, they'll likely tell you that their favorite LEGO game is something created from this era. LEGO Star Wars: The Complete Saga is kind of the obvious choice, but I have heard a couple other names thrown around here or there. But it's been really difficult to keep up with LEGO games since then, because I honestly had my fill of that gameplay back then, and it took a long time before I was nostalgic enough to ask for that style to return. But this isn't a retrospective on the Renaissance era LEGO games. I think that warrants its own video another time. What I specifically want to talk about is where the LEGO Adventure series is today with looking at its most recent installments, as well as talking about where they can go to improve themselves and perhaps spark a whole new renaissance for a generation younger than I am. What I want to do today is talk about the two most recent LEGO Adventure games, that being LEGO Horizon Adventures and LEGO Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga. And while these games have different developers behind them, I think they have a nice duality with each other where we can learn from the mistakes and the strengths of both to create something truly beautiful in the next LEGO Adventure installment. Will you join me? Yeah? LEGO Horizon Adventures is a LEGO take on the Horizon Zero Dawn video game that I didn't play because honestly, I was a Breath of the Wild guy. What are you gonna do? And I really don't plan on comparing subject material versus subject material. As far as I'm concerned, these are both LEGO adventure games, and I want to leave the source material out of the picture because I don't think it's incredibly important for this discussion. What is important to talk about is this game's actual implementation of LEGO. And this time around, the whole world is made out of LEGO bricks. I don't think this is the first time they've done this, but it's the first time I've personally experienced it, so that's pretty fun. And when I say the whole world is made out of LEGO, I'm not just talking about the environment that you walk on, but even elemental objects such as water flowing down or fire burning bushes. As someone who was a big fan of the LEGO movie when it first came out, it follows that similar style of almost stop motion-y animation, and I think that's not only a great way to make it feel like a LEGO game, but it also feels like it doesn't have frame rate issues, and I think on the Nintendo Switch, at least, it probably does. Maybe that's not fair. I can't tell. I honestly can't tell if there's frame problems in it because it's already a stuttery game. I also like how some elements of usual HD graphics is incorporated into the LEGO style world. The lighting reflecting off of various bricks is very satisfying, and the different tricks they use to emulate a lens focus change to really give grasp of scale and scope. I think that's something that plays nicely inside of this LEGO world. It just makes it feel like it's more than just squares and studs. And all of this really aids the charm of a game, and if there's one thing that LEGO games are, it is charming, and it's charming almost every single time. However, there are some areas of charm that I do think is missing. Frankly, as a Renaissance LEGO game player, I really miss the silent film style of animations that would play in order to progress the story. I understand that dialogue's been in the series for over a decade at this point, and I'm still a stickler holding on to those old silent film ways. Call me a Charlie Chaplin fan, or maybe Buster Keaton, or maybe someone who was forced to watch those two exact things in a film class one time, and then I pretend to be an expert. But I think the Renaissance games did such a good job at packaging humor with story progression in such a tight, fast-paced method. And I just kind of missed that. But all that said, the dialogue is not necessarily poorly written. In fact, I think there's a lot of humor to be found here for many ages alike. Although sometimes they talk just a little bit too long, okay? We don't need the exposition before every single level. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. We'll get out of the weeds for a bit and then circle back to it inevitably later. I want to talk about the base gameplay. And the base gameplay, again, base, is solid. Similar to previous LEGO games, you explore various levels collecting studs and fighting certain enemies until the level eventually just ends. And that is the base gameplay. However, I think there is a little bit of a problem where that is also just all of the gameplay. We need to talk about something that's very apparent while playing this game. It simply doesn't evolve. What you play at the very start is what you're going to play all the way through the end, with not a ton of interesting changes in between. Something this game does really well is incorporating combat better than any other LEGO game that I have played. It takes inspiration from the roguelike genre and incorporates it into this game pretty dang well, if you ask me. However, in most roguelike games, you are constantly fighting things to keep the entertainment within the field that you are currently standing. There's a little bit too much space in between actual battles in this game. The battles are mostly with robotic dinosaurs, and that can be pretty exciting, but in between the start of the level and those moments you fight, there's just a lot of walking, and I don't really know why. With the combat being as good as it is and how essential enemies are to the roguelike genre, I'm just not sure why they didn't fill up a lot of this empty space with plenty of enemies to fight. I think it would have made the game much more exciting. And that's only one of the reasons that makes the levels not incredibly exciting. Another one being that there's not much reason to actually explore them. They'll have a couple of paths that branch off, but usually all it does is give you a temporary item or studs, and most of the time it's the latter. Something that the Renaissance games did a lot was adding collectibles inside their levels, and I think that made each level feel a little bit more unique. But also, of course, that's because levels don't look the exact same as each other in those games. I'm not sure why they went this route, but a lot of these levels look the exact same. So the levels are a little bit lackluster, but maybe we don't play this game for the levels. After all, this isn't a Traveler Tales game. This is its own kind of game, and we need to judge it on its own merits, and its merits currently is the combat, and it's fun. There are plenty of gadgets that can customize your utility. I've honestly had a lot of fun just experimenting with the different types of gadgets because they all have their own quirks to them. None of them feel like carbon copies of each other. There's these blast boots that let you do a double jump in the air, but it also burns your opponents if you do it next to them. There's also, of course, this frost smash thing that freezes enemies around you, and even a hot dog stand where someone is throwing out hot dogs that explode. I mean, that's just pretty creative ways to add utility to your character. As you play the game, you also unlock more characters, and these characters aren't just different skin changes like many of the ones from the LEGO Renaissance games, but they all have different primary attacks as well as their own individual skill trees. And the leveling up system for those characters is actually really comprehensive, and I think that's something that we will circle back to a bit when we talk about a certain other game. While there isn't a mass amount of different characters that you can play as, there is a decent amount of skins that you can apply to those characters. And they're not just skins from Horizon, they're also skins from Lego City or Lego Ninjago or other various Lego properties. And as someone who's grown up building sets from some of those properties, it's really cool to see them represented in a different IP. But the skins aren't the only thing you can customize. You can also customize various buildings and structures inside of your hub world. If you want to make the whole place look like Lego City, go for it. I give you full permission and full reign. Just cut me in on some of the royalties when you get your first tenants. What tenants? Now, the primary thing you do to collect these customizations is to spend studs on it, and honestly, it makes the economy system pretty dang good. However, it makes me see a missed opportunity with the collection in general. In these levels, you'll often find piles of bricks that you can combine together to make various structures. What I don't understand is why they didn't use this as an opportunity to build structures that you could then later go build in your actual hub world. They are essentially separate from each other, and that's just a big missed opportunity to not only add a collectible value within the levels, but that would also make the builds you find unique, which they currently aren't. And having duplicate builds is honestly not incredibly exciting, and sometimes I just feel like, why did I bother spending the time making this random thing? So overall, I'm kind of split because there were some ways they were able to push this Lego adventure genre forward, but then there were other ways where they didn't learn from the giants that they currently stand on the shoulders of. And one of those giants, unfortunately, is Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga. The Skywalker Saga is something I feel like I need to approach delicately, and it's not because some Star Wars fans are crazy, even though we both know some of them are, but also because this game presented so much promise and possibility and opportunity and disappointment. For those who don't know, this game was supposed to return LEGO to the Renaissance era, with bringing Traveler Tales back in a much grander scope. And I cringe when I say grander because I just imagine, wow, what if they made this game without such a massive scope? We might have had something truly special. Before I return to the weeds to talk about just the various ways this game missed the mark, I do want to give proper credit where credit is due. The game's beautiful. The imaginative world of Star Wars is visualized in such a beautiful HD light this time around, with more detail than we've seen in many other Star Wars games, not just the LEGO ones. I could be wrong with this random casino place that they went to in Episode 8, and I still don't really know why they went there. Has any other Star Wars game depicted this place as beautifully as it's depicted here? We also have much more camera control over our individual figures, which just allows for more vista viewing and being like, wow, that looks like something pretty epic. And with this game mixing together all 9 episodes of Star Wars movies, there's more content in a LEGO game than we've ever seen before. Various modern quality of life mechanics have also been brought into this game, with over-the-shoulder zoom when shooting, modernized space flying, and the droids no longer being agonizingly slow. There's also these huge hub worlds with so many different collectibles in it, and it can honestly be a lot of fun just collecting different things inside of these hub worlds without even doing the levels. And that's because the levels, again, the weakest part of this game. I'm sorry, our time out of the weeds is up. I'm going back in. The hub worlds are so massive and there are so many of them, making it a real nightmare to actually progress in level progression. Just finding out how to activate certain levels feels like a chore, and there's many times where you're not even sure if you're in a level or if you're in a hub world. Sometimes you'll think you'll start a level in a hub world, but turns out you just talk to someone who then tells you to go talk to another person inside the hub world. You go talk to them, they tell you to talk to another person. It just put me in the level at this point. I know I'm a broken record by bringing up these Renaissance games, but I remember how simple it was just to have episode 1 here and the 6 levels inside of episode 1, and I can beat them in that order. And when I was inside those levels, I knew I needed to get True Hero, as well as get mini kits and maybe a red brick if I was feeling fancy. But there's these times where I'll start a level and not even know I'm in the level, so I won't know to collect all the mini kits or get all of the True Jedi. It takes me some time to figure that stuff out. It's just weird because the hub worlds themselves are actually pretty interesting, and honestly, I could see this almost as 2 separate games. If they removed the levels completely, it would be a pretty fun sandbox LEGO Star Wars game. That's not really what they were making, and it's not really what we were coming back to the series for. We were coming back for the classic Traveler Tales adventure LEGO genre, and that doesn't fit in a completely sandbox environment. But this isn't the only thing this game set a scope too big for. In fact, pretty much every aspect of this game really should have been cut down and focused. And that's some praise I give to LEGO Horizon Adventures, because that's a very focused game. We also brought up the skill tree with Horizon, and it's also in this game, except it's done in an incredibly confusing way. There's not just a tech tree that upgrades every single unit, there's also each kinds of unit that have their own tech trees on them, and I don't know about you guys, but the whole time I'm thinking, this is a LEGO game, I don't need this much customization. I just hit the guys a couple times and they die. It's not that complicated. I did mention this game has a lot of collectibles, but honestly, I think it's like too many collectibles. Best example of this is when you get the upgrade that allows you to see where collectibles are in your hub world. Look at this nightmare. I dream of this kind of nightmare. Look at all those circles. Something I always criticized Super Mario Odyssey about was just how the moons didn't have as much value to them because they were literally everywhere. And I think it's the same case here in LEGO Star Wars. It's just hard to feel a lot of satisfaction for collecting one of these bricks because there are so many of them out there. And it also distracts your time playing. When you're in the hub world just trying to head towards a level marker, a lot of times you think, well, I might as well get this collectible here. I might as well get this collectible here. And it creates this level of artificial playtime in between. And I guess it's not incredibly artificial, but that's the best word I got for it right now. I don't want to say it's padding per se, but it does make my total playtime feel almost unnatural. A common criticism for this game that you find online is that the game is boring, and I think there's a couple of different reasons for why some people feel that way, but I think this artificial playtime is maybe the biggest one. The second biggest being that the levels themselves just aren't that fun. It's just tough because the big appeal of this 9-episode game is progressing through the 9 episodes, but for some reason, actual progression feels like an afterthought here. Another common criticism for this game is that it was buggy at launch, and a couple years later, I'm happy to announce the game is still really buggy. And that was sarcasm. I'm not very happy about that. Fun fact, I beat through every level of episode 3 except for the last one because it crashed after I started it. To this day, that level has disappeared. I cannot play the final level of episode 3, one of the most climactic parts of the whole series. I did what most people would do, and I put down the game for a couple of years and just hoped they would do a bug fix for it. They don't really do bug fixes here though. Oh, but DLC, yeah, sure. We need more of that. We need more downloadable content to a game that already has trouble functioning. That's what we need. What is this, Ark Survival Evolved? That's just some bad game behavior. I don't know what else to call it. There is fun to be had with this game. I don't think it is a bottom of the barrel experience, but I can't ignore the fact that it is broken at several points and that the scope is far too big for what's needed of a LEGO game. So, what can we do with our knowledge of both of these games to push the LEGO adventure genre in the right direction? For starters, let's keep this focused approach. It's something that worked well in the Renaissance, and I think it's something that's going to continue to work well in the modern games, as Horizon Adventures has shown. Progression in an adventure game should be cohesive. If we're not entirely sure how to push the adventure forward, then we're going to get caught in a standstill. But if we don't have a reason to stop and smell the roses, then there's no incentive to achieve more than what's expected of us. An easy way to add gratification is just more collectibles inside the world. Not enough to daunt the player past the point of wanting to progress, but enough to keep them satisfied for going the extra mile. Having the game be grounded in a LEGO universe is great, unless you don't do anything with the LEGOs within that universe. We should be having more opportunities to build and customize things and make it exciting to build and customize. As much as I've been praising the Renaissance games, I'm not asking them to recreate the exact same formula they have been using. Evolution inside the formula is always appreciated, as long as it's done well, and I think the combat and roguelike systems are a great example of this. But we also should allow the game to evolve within itself. I don't think level 1 should feel the exact same as level 15, 20, and 50. And finally, we need some challenges that are unique to individual levels, so that when we look at a screenshot or watch some gameplay of a specific point in the game, we can remember exactly where that point is because it stuck with us. It was something that was beyond just a template of Lego bricks laid out in a terrain-like fashion. The porridge is too cold with Horizon Adventures, and it's too hot with the Skywalker Saga. What we really need is something down the middle that's just right. A medium scope with lessons learned from both ends. Then we may truly see a rebirth of the LEGO Renaissance in modern day. Hopefully the porridge of this video was pretty warm, but if you want to try a hotter porridge, you can always check out my Life Before Mario Kart 8 video where I talk about all the Mario Kart games, and if you want to support me on Patreon, you can watch my exclusive video on Mario and Luigi Brothership, as well as get access to all the video game footage you've seen in this video that you can use for your own creative projects. That's gonna do it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. So long.